For more reaction on the conclusion of the U.S. troops withdrawal from Afghanistan, we cross live now to SABC News correspondent in Beijing, Patrick Falk. Patrick, good day. So just looking at this story, firstly, how much interest is there in this particular story in China, firstly, and also how much cooperation can be expected between Beijing and Washington on this matter?
Yeah, well, there's enormous interest for lots of good reasons. And when we talk about that sort of international cooperation, you know, a lot of that really depends on cooperation between the US and China on Afghanistan. It's hard to say what sort of cooperation we'll see. China has said that, you know, it's clear that the US's commitment to Afghanistan doesn't end here. There was a conversation that was held between State Councillor Wang Yi and Secretary of State Antony Blinken just on Sunday night. And Wang said in that conversation that it was important for Washington to provide economic and humanitarian aid to Afghanistan. He also said that it was important for Washington to engage with the Taliban and to positively guide the Taliban in leading the country. Now, Beijing has pinned the blame for the chaos in the country squarely on the hasty pullout of troops, and it's been scathing about the 20-year-long war. In many ways, that does, on the one hand, serve China's interests in criticizing American foreign policy. But on the other hand, it's really left a big problem right on China's doorstep in the form of instability. And to answer your question on just what sort of cooperation we can see, well, China has said the ball is in America's court. It said that, you know, that cooperation is going to depend on the US's attitude towards China, and said that it wants it to stop what it's called attacks and smears against the country on issues like the origins of COVID, like Xinjiang, like Hong Kong, like Taiwan. But given the state of relations between Washington and Beijing right now, that is not an easy thing to achieve.
And perhaps looking at the relationship between the new administration in Kabul under the Taliban and China, what's that relationship like? How would you characterize that? And how reliant will the Taliban be on Beijing for the reconstruction of Afghanistan at this point?
Well, it's a delicate relationship, and, you know, what sort of role China plays remains to be seen in many ways. And, you know, the Taliban has made it clear that it does want Beijing's support. We heard from the Taliban spokesperson just yesterday saying that it was looking forward to China playing a constructive role in forging peace in the country and the reconstruction of Afghanistan. But I think it's fair to say that China's really taking a wait-and-see approach right now. Remember, it hasn't officially endorsed the Taliban as legitimate leaders of the country, a legitimate government. And that is specifically what the Taliban needs. It needs legitimacy right now. But as far as Beijing is concerned, it needs to see what happens in the coming days and weeks and months ahead. And what Beijing is doing right now is giving the Taliban space to prove itself, particularly to prove that it can disassociate itself from terror organizations. That, of course, is China's main concern. One of the things that's been talked about is this sort of cooperation between the Taliban and China and the US as well could push certain radical factions or radical members of the Taliban towards ISIS-K, and that is going to be a big challenge for the group, and it's something that China is holding out to see how it plays out, essentially. But analysts also say that it's unlikely that Beijing will get sucked into putting its own troops on the ground, so it's unlikely that we're going to expect that sort of security support from Beijing to the Taliban or to Afghanistan, and how much investment the country offers and any other form of support, quite frankly, remains to be seen.
And just finally, Patrick, you touched on the geopolitical stability in that particular region. As things stand right now, what are the immediate threats? And also, in terms of what could possibly happen going forward, what are the sort of scenarios that could develop?
Well, as China has said, this hasty pullout by the US has given an opportunity to terrorist organizations that is really China's main concern. ISIS-K, of course, is going to be a big concern, and with the US pulling out, that is one of its rivals in the whole picture that's been pulled out, if you like. So China, no doubt, will be keeping a very close eye on that in particular. But of course, the situation in China with the focus on Xinjiang as well, there is going to be concern, particularly in Xinjiang province, which borders with Afghanistan, that there could be some sort of spillover of terrorist organizations, and that is something that China's just going to have to keep a very close eye on, and part of that will be reliant on the Taliban, as I say, to try and cut itself off from terror groups altogether.
Well, thanks so much. That was SABC News correspondent Patrick Falk speaking to us from Beijing.